Welcome to the podcast, Your Content Connection, Modern Content Migration Strategies for Microsoft 365. As always, your hosts are Jeff Willinger, who is joining us from LA, and Rob Aldijk, who is broadcasting from the Netherlands. Today, we have a special session, an episode in our Greatest Hits series that features industry expert and Microsoft MVP Alistair Pugin. This is part one of a two-part panelist discussion that was originally broadcast as part of our Wednesday webinar series. Today's topic focuses on debunking common myths about secure and compliant content migration strategies from legacy ECM systems to Microsoft 365 and SharePoint Online. Let's begin now with Alistair, who will kick off the discussion. Thank you for listening.
When we start talking about myths, there's a bunch of myths that we always face when having these conversations with customers about legacy ECM systems. And in the old days, pre-Xillio, speaking to, and Jeff, it will probably resonate quite a bit with you, coming from a SharePoint background, there was only 3 or 4 vendors out there that could do a SharePoint to SharePoint migration, right? The AvePoints, the Metalogics, the ShareGates, and a few other ones like Simply Migrate and those guys. And we would generally have a conversation with customers about, you want to move from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2013 or 2016. And these are the 3 tools that are available to you in order to perform these migrations. We've never really had a conversation with customers about, hey, you've got a Documentum, or you've got a FileNet, or you've got an FYI, or a Hummingbird, or an OpenText live link product in your stable, and we've never really had these conversations. And for me, when I started on this journey with Xillio, it's always been the thing, right? It's never been a conversational piece about, hey, we want to migrate from OpenText. And there's a lot of SharePoint consultants out there that still don't know that this is possible. And never mind the SharePoint consultants or the SharePoint architects of yesteryear, organizations don't know this. And I've got 3 customers currently that says, well, we're running Documentum, we can't move. We're going to keep that there. We've got a Hummingbird implementation. We're going to keep that Hummingbird implementation there. We want to move to Office 365, and we're going to take our file shares across to Office 365, but everything that's in our EDRMS system or our DMS, we're keeping there. And you know, when they start with saying words like DMS or EIM, we know that conversation is going to go somewhere. So the first myth, Rob, from your perspective, when customers are saying it is impossible to migrate from a legacy ECM system to Microsoft 365, I mean, how do you generally handle that? What are the conversations that you are having with customers regarding that?
Well, it starts with acknowledging that there is always some reality behind the myth. So for sure, if you look at what use cases ECM, it says enterprise, right? So it already spells complex and with a very broad range of solutions on top of it, etc. So in practice, that is, well, to my surprise, sometimes not always the case. So certainly ECM investments have been huge, are still huge, licenses alone, maintenance, implementation. Do customers get the most out of it currently? Some cases I know, yes, it is the prime, especially in document-intensive industries, insurance, banking, healthcare, etc. I know some pretty good examples of a very powerful use of ECM. However, with the advance of digital, of course, the demand for more modern, agile, user-friendly, not so hardcore, but just low entry kind of solutions has increased a lot. And also the pressure on online working, of course, especially with COVID, has surged the demand for very efficient online collaboration. And what you then see is that ECM configurations have evolved over sometimes 20 years, right? So they're not just serving collaboration, documents, authoring and review and approval and stuff like that. Old EDM, enterprise document management stuff. It's really about integrating with primary business systems supporting primary processes in the business, etc. So what you typically see if you inventorize for any transformation out of ECM, you will have this ecosystem of integrations and all kinds of use cases that potentially you need to support in the new platform. So impossible? No, certainly not, because ECM to online modern cloud M365 platform has been performed, or first to the on-prem version of the same, right? We have examples of that. There's big resources companies in the world that done that in the past, banks, financial institutions in general. So more than enough use cases where this was successful, but they were never easy or trivial. That's another myth to think that it will be trivial to move to the cloud. It is a transformation in the end. It needs to be managed as a program, especially in the larger enterprises. And you need a specific way of doing that and a lot of experience if you want to make that successful.
Yeah, we do see a lot of times, specifically around customizations and integrations from legacy systems with their proprietary API, the move to the cloud for that specific thing is always negated because they're worrying about integrations. Jeff, on your side, working in the ECM space for as long as you have been, are you seeing a logical mapping between solution features from legacy ECM systems to the product stack that is Microsoft 365?
You know, let's take it even a step back from that. So having a vision, why are we doing this to begin with? You know, so having that strategy, every successful migration, right? We all know it requires that careful definition of where you are and where you want to go. It definitely pays to be exceptionally clear-sighted about what the future value of this enterprise is targeting and how it will really differentiate itself, you know, over time. I run marathons, I do triathlons. I don't love running. The only reason why I do it is because I like to eat so much, so I see value, right? So we have to figure out, right? History teaches us that it's all too easy to get stuck in this pattern of, you know, experimenting with different cloud services. And it's not enough to just migrate to the cloud and expect new business models. It's really being more agile. And it must be more than an abstract concept. It's got to be a real impact on the business. And you have to be specific about what we want to do in the future. So right now, you know, before you migrate, you need to nail down the actual industry use cases and what you want to do. Obviously, you know, that's why they hired me here at Xillio. So that's literally, that's what gets me up every morning. And then one of my favorite phrases is plan your work and work your plan, right? A fast migration doesn't necessarily need to compromise the quality, and it really needs to minimize the unknowns and then prioritize the values along the way, and understanding, you know, what Rob is going to be talking about, this data implications, and align that with the stakeholders.
Look, for me, the biggest thing is that, and I mean, this is not a product punt, but for the most part, the biggest issue is the unknown. Not knowing that there's a product out there that can do a logical mapping for you from a legacy ECM system into SharePoint Online. I think for me, that's the biggest thing. Once you can get past the hurdle and understand that there's a product where you can map your information architecture across, hit a button and go make some coffee, and it will physically copy that document with its history to SharePoint Online. That's the magic sauce for me, straight off the bat. I mean, getting into the complexities of the migration, because some migrations might be easy, some are more complex, and you have to build more things. It's no longer just the DMS. There's BPM solutions that you've built and so forth, so on, and that needs a different type of mapping to just moving content. But for me, the biggest thing is there is a tool in the world right now that you can buy that will physically connect to your legacy ECM system and connect to SharePoint Online, and you can physically move. So for me, I would generally start it to say, well, it's not a manual process. I don't have to get the content physically out of the content store of a Documentum or a Live Link. There's a tool that will connect to that system, and I'd be able to copy it out. Because that's the other thing, the duration of migrating when you're doing a manual thing. And from a vendor locking perspective, that's usually the case, right? Oh, we've got this custom file store and we encapsulate the document in a DAT file, and we've got a custom header that you can't read, so you can't get your content out of the back-end system, which is a lot of times where people fall over, where the infrastructure architect says, well, shit, man, I can't get the content out of that legacy ECM system because I don't have a connector, I don't understand the API. I speak to the legacy ECM company and they say, well, we can't give you your data. It's like going with a email archiving vendor that says, we'll get your data into the archive, but getting it out is almost impossible because it's custom and proprietary. So for me, that's the big thing. And I think once customers understand that there's a product that will make this easy for you, do the heavy lifting, that is quite a bit of the battle won into saying, well, you can modernize. There's a new way of working, this collaborative ecosystem that Microsoft and other cloud vendors are providing you with. You can now exist inside of that world by using tools like Xillio.
Yeah. And one thing we found there by experience, Alistair, is, and you wouldn't expect it up front, but across these different solutions where you move from legacy to new, etc., the myth is actually that they are all so different, they're not comparable, right? And that in practice is not true. We found that actually you can map anything to anything. It's more, in essence, and that touches upon organizational change management immediately, it's the way of working that's been attached to the old platform that sticks. And it's very difficult for a number of people to think out of the box and start realizing what the exact impact of such a move would be for themselves. And I'm not sure if you've ever read the book Who Stole My Cheese, but I think it should be utilized in any transformation of this kind for everybody that's involved, and it will clarify a lot of things. I think we should make it a free handout in any project we do.
Yeah. You buy the product, your entire deployment team will get a copy of Who Stole My Cheese, right?
Check.
But Jeff would probably lead with something like Simon Sinek, start with why, right? I mean,
I'm a fan.
Yeah, me too. Because it's about being innovative, right? And legacy ECM systems that doesn't give you that freedom of being innovative or being able to provide a collaborative ecosystem, because it's not a 20-year-old product. It's
Correct.
Not built on 30 years worth of this is what a knowledge management environment needs to look like. It's changed, right? And you have to adapt. Organizations that don't adapt and don't change will get left behind. And talking about changing, I want to move on to the second myth, because once you get past this one, right, you say, well, there's a tool that will copy your entire content store, all 16 terabytes worth, into SharePoint Online. The next naysayer, the next myth that people come up with is, well, we bought this product for compliance. And we have this certification called DoD, and we need to remain compliant. So we can't move away from that because our auditors are saying that we need a DoD certified content repository and whatever other compliance regulations that are available to the industry that you are specifically in. And we'll touch on that in a couple of slides, but this is always the conversation, right? So Jeff, you spent a lot of time dealing with public sector or government organizations for your sins. And I'm sure compliance and regulatory compliance in healthcare and those sort of things have come up in the past. What have your experiences been around the whole compliance side of Microsoft 365 and why customers seem to think that it's not there?
I always like it when customers, I'll be pitching or talking to a customer about a migration project, and they'll put security as later on in the project. And I think that you have to start security and compliance from day one. Security and compliance risk is frequently cited. I was reading an article by Sky High Hopes. Security and compliance risk is the most frequently cited barrier to achieving full cloud value. 46% of clients placing it in their top 3 and 17% citing it as their top concern. That's a lot. In addition, right, The introduction of the strict data privacy regulations, such as GDPR, require serious thinking about planning around data and data security and privacy. So when we think about building the secure cloud, it definitely pays to be thoughtful around the data need, use, access, encryption, storage for now and in the future.
Yeah. And I always bring up this slide when customers say, and there's an entire backend to this around the Service Trust Portal and Compliance Manager and the way Microsoft looks at compliance. And it's not just specific to, I've got a document sitting in a library somewhere that's going to make me compliant across the stacks. And it extends to the collaboration features inside of Teams. It touches the mail that you send, right? And a lot of times when I talk to customers about being compliant, they say, well, our environment is locked down and we don't allow external access to any of the documents in our document store, right? And then the first question I say to them, well, can you attach a file? Can you attach a file to an email? Yeah, we allow that as long as it's a PDF, so it's not editable, right? And then I go, well, your compliance is out the window there. You are not secure in any way, shape, or form if you are allowing them to download a document out of your content repository, be it Documentum or FileNet, and then uploading it to an email and sending it to the person, right? Because you can't share it internally. Rob, you've had some experience dealing with the EDM, the EDRMS type organizations that always throw that around, that talk about records management and compliance. Are these similar conversations that you are having with customers?
Like Jeff said, nowadays it's almost a starting point sometimes. I recall the days where we had basically ventured into a discussion on adopting ECM or online collaboration or, well, in the old days, the on-prem, SharePoint, etc., and always winding up with security and compliance discussions. But at that point in time, I think the pressure to implement compliance was like maybe 1/5 of what it currently is. And you put the standards up, they are coming almost every day now. And it's very difficult, of course, for an organization to meet all those demands. And they sometimes try to get away with workarounds and what have you, just out of sheer lack of budget and people to implement all of this, let alone monitor and maintain and improve it. So I think there was a market, and I'm very happy to see that a vendor like Microsoft has jumped onto that with an enormous investment to automate part of this. So I always look at, okay, which standards should be adopted? Is there something we can already kind of install, which then, or activate or configure that will supply that? And then you see a differentiation between the more generic regulations that would apply to all businesses or to certain regions, you know, national, regional law, like the data privacy. Okay, there's still global differences there, but the European one, GDPR, can certainly not be circumvented for European businesses, and even local legislation is there. Records management standards, well, there are too many, I would say. There's no global standard for it, but certainly they do share a lot of common features and requirements that can be implemented by basically configuring standard modules now. It's not some separate system you have to buy and integrate, although that was the practice of the past, right? It's also not true that you can have one solution to rule all records management scope, unfortunately, because it extends beyond documents, content. It's including all kinds of data, right? And even transactions. So it is a complex beast, but if you look at a few years ago, it would be close to impossible to manage all this from the same environment. And I'm very happy to see that, at least in the case of Microsoft, that has all become part of the platform as an integrated function. So we go to the compliance center and we see this enormous checklist of all kinds of compliance measures you can take. If you install fresh, it's of course all 0 scores, but pretty fast. By activating licenses, activating processes, you can get to a very decent level of compliance. And it covers basically all the important topics, from sensitivity management, data management for sensitivity, to records management, to data loss protection, identity access management, it's all there. And I think the great thing is that it's been centralized now. So a compliance manager and the resources actually supporting those processes can all center around this functionality for any workload that is running in their Azure tenant, including the MS365 one. So that's kind of a revolution.
Yeah, it's definitely a conversation, and this is what always interests me is where customers are saying, well, they need to remain compliant, and because they need to subscribe to some records management, the 5512. I can never get that number right. And I can never remember it. It's the 5512.
15489 3021 the 27001 MN. Yeah, that's the problem with compliance managers and professionals in this area. They can all dream these standards, but it's very difficult to explain to business why they're useful or mandatory, etc. That becomes a crusade in itself. So the more you can sort of take it away from the business as a mandatory thing and make the life easier, the better it is. And that should be the role of a compliance officer. Make sure you adopt those solutions that make the burden of being compliant as small as possible. And the same for industry-specific standards, like you mentioned here, a few, the HIPAA for the health, and there's SAC, there's a lot actually. Those can all be implemented by adopting information models and configuring them. I'm sure there's a market for specializing in implementing these specific standards and procedures, processes, using the automation and the information model configuration tooling in the platform. And there's absolutely a market for these industry-specific configurations. The good thing is they're not separate applications anymore. They can just be configured in the same platform. You can have the best of both worlds. It will take some time to do it, obviously, but I expect more and more standard solutions appearing in the marketplace, the Microsoft marketplace as well, to be adopted. And you then only take what you need, obviously, and you can make a program out of it. You don't have to do everything at the same time, etc.
But that's the good thing.
It can be adopted.
Yeah. Look, that's the good thing about Compliance Manager with the templates. It actually tells you what you need to do and what specific section or article it references in the legislation or the regulations. And what Microsoft has also done, they've looked at the globe and said, well, what is the standard in the UK? So the Data Protection Act in the UK, there's a template for the DPA in the UK, right? In South Africa, we call it POPI, and the ECT Act, they have localized these templates so that we can actually use it in South Africa and use the South African regulations and legislation, and they've actually built it out that way. And for me, the big thing is it's not just limited to your document management system. It extends across your entire portfolio. So that's the cool thing about working with Microsoft solutions. It's because it is an integrated platform where you don't have to buy an archiving tool to do regulatory compliance for mail and then buy another tool to sit on top of your DMS if you need a module plugin for records management from the 5512, whatever it's called, or a HIPAA plugin. That ships standard out of the box with Office 365. And Jeff, you mentioned earlier on, and moving on to our third myth, and I know this is quite a place for you to play in because you spend a lot of time talking to customers about security, and you mentioned it earlier on with the stats. And a lot of customers are saying, but because I can't physically touch, feel, perimeter network is no longer a thing. I can't. And there used to be a slide. It was a meme that went around that was a half height. It was an image of a half height rack, and it says, in case of cybersecurity attack, break glass and pull out cable, right? Because you pull out the network cable, and that's how you thwart a cybersecurity attack on something in your building. And because people can't, I had this conversation with my girlfriend. Was it my girlfriend's mother? Who was I speaking to? Can't remember. But no, it was my son's girlfriend's mother. And we had breakfast, and she wanted me to explain to her, what is this thing called the cloud? And I said, well, it's a computer in another building, right? Because that's all it is. And the minute I said that, she understood it. It's a computer. It's still a computer. It's not up in the sky, right? Sometimes underwater, but it's in another building. And then that clicked, and that's why she understood what the cloud is. And a lot of times, infrastructure people like to touch things and they like to see the lights. And talking about the cloud is not secure. And that's also a barrier to entry. When we're talking to customers, they say, well, you can't guarantee my security. Jeff, you mentioned some numbers there around security. And it's such a big thing because a lot of times we see security and compliance being bolted together, yet they can operate separately. And when we look at what Microsoft is doing in this space, and they don't have that number on the slide, but they spend $4 billion a year just on security. That's not compliance, it's just on security. Jeff, what are you seeing today when customers are saying, well, the cloud is not secure anymore?
You know, I remember when Microsoft first announced when they said, hey, you're all going to go to the cloud, this Azure cloud or Azure, depending upon where you're from. And people were just like, yeah, organizations, I heard them laughing. We're never going to go to the cloud. We're never going to go. And now they're going kicking and screaming. I want to say, Al, maybe you could correct me. Are there about 50% of organizations are there or have some type of hybrid approach to that? Do you know what the number is? How many organizations are in the cloud now?
Not off the top of my head. I know they've doubled. That number's doubled over the last 2 years because of COVID. Microsoft said, I think it was in April 20, what are we in 2021, 2020, Satya Nadella said they've achieved 2 years of digital transformation in 3 months because of COVID. So they've literally doubled. And it's no longer, are we going to the cloud, but when are we going to the cloud? Because they have to move, right? It doesn't make financial sense to remain on-prem in the modern workplace and security space, right? It literally doesn't make any sense. Moving a virtual machine across to Azure, for the most part, you've got to look at what the sizing is like and usage. But when we talk about modern workplace scenarios and modern workplace solutions, which encompasses enterprise content management and enterprise information management, it's a no-brainer. They've had to move. It's not like they have a choice anymore. And yes, hybrid could possibly become an end state for whatever the reason. It's no longer just a journey, but customers are no longer scared of moving. And the big thing here is for them to understand that the security that they have around mailboxes and the security that they have around running online meetings and running conferences and running webinars, the same securities can be extended and is extended by default to their document management solution, to their content repository where they're storing content, the way they've treated that legacy ECM system. And when we look at the stats around the intelligent security graph, I mean, this is what Microsoft faces daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly.
Yeah, I mean, the cloud, I mean, to your point, the cloud could be much more than a secure proprietary data center, but security teams really need that skill set and tools to do so on each of the cloud platforms that the organization is using. Usually it's Microsoft Azure, the most secure cloud, right? So these leading organizations overcome that cloud security skills deficit by building security guardrails at the start and automatically fixing any sort of deviations from the control baseline and establishing kind of that lightweight, we haven't talked about the G word, right? That governance process to manage security, technology, and cloud evolution over time. So really, leveraging that security expertise of an external provider like Xillio and the cloud provider will be key to getting that cloud security right. And you got to get it right the first time.
Yeah. Look, we talk about frameworks that it's not only come from Microsoft, both AWS and Google subscribe to a zero trust security framework where it talks to signal, decision, and enforcement. And this extensibility is not just about, I've got a mobile phone and I want to check mail and now I have to use a biometric signature to open up mail. It extends to your content repository as well. And being able to say, well, I can share with confidence because I'm applying an information protection policy that stops people from printing documents I can email it to them, but they won't be able to print it. They won't be able to edit it. They can't forward it onto anyone. They can't strip out the information protection. Just that in its own, right? Forget records management. Just being able to apply policy in flight makes it so much easier for us to worry or to negate the worry that most people struggle with on a daily basis because they don't know where their content is. If you think about what happened 3-4 months ago, where I'm sure Signal and Telegram got together and they spent some marketing money on saying that WhatsApp is not efficient from a security perspective, right? Because they wanted to grow their user base. But think about it this way, right? You've got WhatsApp for desktop. I can go into SharePoint and I can grab a document and I can literally drag it and upload it to anyone I'm talking to in WhatsApp. And based on the security principles implemented from a guardrail perspective, like you mentioned, Jeff, and I like the word security. Well, guardrails is a thing, right? So security guardrails, you build these policies that's going to worry about, okay, if my user's sitting at home and they are now moving a document from SharePoint, in flight, I can apply an information protection policy that says, okay, we don't know who you're sending this to. I'm going to apply an information rights management on top of the document and making sure that the document's secure. And generally, if you are not worrying about identity and access management, from a holistic perspective, you're not going to get that experience. So when it comes to security for Microsoft 365 and more so OneDrive and SharePoint in this world that we're living in, it is more secure than your legacy ECM systems because it implements zero trust. Rob, I know you've spent some time around the enforcement side when it comes to regulatory compliance. What are you seeing today in the world when it comes to how organizations are building out their cloud security?
Yeah, so it's a constant evolution, right? It's kind of a rat race between internet criminals and the compliance and security officers and technology firms trying to beat them. And that will go ever on. I think the main thing is that as a business, you should not be worrying too much about that kind of low-level technology anymore that tries to create security for your data and for your access and your transactions, because you will never keep up with that race yourself. It's impossible. It takes billions literally to keep up. And you better leave it to a few large parties that specialize in that. On the other hand, there's and any cloud provider will share that with you. There's a shared responsibility. So you can throw as much security measures, physical, logical at your data, but if you are not applying secure, let's say, soft policies to your employees, it's worthless, because they will share they will click on the dangerous emails regardless on their private computer, share that information with the professional one. They will lend out their passwords, and etc., etc., etc. So you're still vulnerable in the last mile, and I think that's something you still will be responsible of as a business. But for sure, let's say all the hard parts you can easily leave to the provider, because they have such advanced technology now to support you with that. On the other hand, I think we should be wary of the fact that this should not make life difficult for any end user in the end, right? So some are already complaining on the multi-factor authentication, and there's I think the ease of use always should be top of mind, because I can now allow my laptop to be my token, right? So because I'm the only one using it and its access is secured, I can use it as a token. So I don't have to use separate tokens or applications managing tokens, etc. per se. So you have to be smart about it, and all of the things will continue to evolve, and you have to review it for adoption, etc. But the good thing is it's there, and it's much more sophisticated than you could ever onboard yourself on premise.
This wraps up part 1 of the session, 5 myths that block you from accelerating your digital workplace strategy. In part 2, Alistair, Jeff, and Rob will discuss successful compliant migration strategies that enable a modern digital workplace. Thank you for listening today, and thank you for sharing the recording.